Bill, let me ask you about the 10-year Treasury, which is at 4.5% now. Hasn't been this high since 2007. That's a long time. What does 4.5% on the 10-year tell us about where we are, how we got here, and where we're going?
Well, it tells us that inflation has gone up. Back in the day, 2 or 3 years ago, it was 1%. Now we're at 4.5%, and so inflation has risen, and it's reflecting the future of inflation. And to my way of thinking, there's this debate about 4% or 5%. I'm in the 5% camp, but it's basically a similar debate about inflation. Will it be 2 or will it be 3? I think it's fairly evident that real interest rates will be higher than they were back in the day. They couldn't get much lower. So we're really talking about an inflation forecast of 2%, which is what the Fed wants, 3%, which is what many in the marketplace, including myself, think is going to happen.
Why is that? Why is inflation persistent? Why is it higher? Why is it maybe higher longer?
Well, the government spends a lot of money. We have annual deficits of $1.5 to $2 trillion, which is 5 to 6% of GDP, which is close to historic ranges for a good period of time of economic growth. And so, it's the government spending, it's the fiscal spending coming out of COVID, it's the economy that's doing much better than people think at 3 to 4% in the last 12 to 18 months.
What kind of job do you think Jay Powell has done? How do you rate him?
I don't rate him highly, and maybe this goes back to the early part of the century in which the Fed didn't know much in terms of derivatives and in terms of credit default swaps and so on. I have a sense that the Fed itself, and you talked about Jay Powell, but I have a sense that the Fed itself is not as oriented towards economics as opposed to social types of considerations. And so I'm a little suspicious of their judgment going forward. Powell, in the last 12 to 18 months, has put his foot in the mouth to some extent on some of his forecasts. He's doing sort of good now. We'll see. But I trust the market more than Jay Powell. The market, I believe, trusts Jay Powell too much.
I'm going to ask you, are there any Fed chairs that you think did a good job? A lot of people like to criticize Fed chairs. I feel like, is there anyone you hold up and said, no, that person did a good job?
Oh, yes, it's Paul Volcker. He
right.
shut it down. He shut down close to 20% inflation with very high interest rates, and it was painful and hard to do as a Fed chairman. But, he's the mensch, he's the man. And that's a long time ago. Since then, there's been other chairmen, Bernanke and
Greenspan.
Greenspan, of course, with Greenspan. But I think Volcker's the historical mensch.
The historical mensch. How optimistic are you about the United States and the human species, even writ large?
Well, the human species will endure. We will move on, and to doubt human nature is to take the wrong side. Human nature, in terms of optimism, usually carries the day, but we have our problems, as we know, in terms of global warming, globally, in terms of conflicts, demographics, in terms of aging. People, the boomers, are getting much older now, and they spend less as opposed to more. And so all of these things have risk elements to them in terms of the forward pricing of markets. You asked about human nature. I think there will always be people, there will always be societies that want to do well, want to do better, and will do. And so it doesn't pay to bet against the market, so to speak, or to bet against people.